Tyler, it's the end of the year. Let's talk about QuantumScape. Let's predict where we think they will be. Let's call it a year from now. Let's say the end of 2025, early 2026. You ready?
Let's go. I mean, we're trying to do this probably before management issues their predictions. So let's see how we stack up against them in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll say this. They've been really good. And that's for startup businesses like this. They often set maybe unrealistic or optimistic goals, and then they bring them back in a little bit. But we've seen this business be consistently, generally, directionally pretty good with saying, here's what we want to accomplish, and then doing it, and then saying, okay, here's what's next and when. And they've given us a little bit to work with. So I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Let's go.
Okay. All right. Before we get to that, though, I'm Jason Hall. This is Investing Unscripted. This video is sponsored by The Motley Fool. If you're looking for even more great stock ideas, you should go check out our special link. It's fool.com/unscripted. Go check out that link and you can get access to the Motley Fool's 10 best stocks to buy right now. It's a great opportunity to start supercharging your investing results early. You don't have to wait till 2025. The last time we got the full update was when QuantumScape recorded Q3 back in October. Again, there's not really any revenue happening here, but we did get some good information about how they're going to commercialize and their big partnership with Volkswagen.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, this agreement where they'll license their tech out to Volkswagen. Volkswagen will basically be able to build QuantumScape's technology-enabled batteries, probably going for the higher end of the Volkswagen kind of suite of products. I don't think it's a mistake on the slides that they mentioned that they use names like Bugatti and Lamborghini and things like that, that you're probably not going to be putting these in their Volkswagen Golfs anytime soon because of the performance of it. And it typically means it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But it gives you an idea of how this is going to work, because at first it's going to be more expensive, low volume production. And because of that, you want to make a profit, which means higher cost or higher price. And it's really hard to do that when you're trying to do it a mass market product. But when you're doing it into luxury vehicles that can display a revolutionary better performance and product versus your kind of battery electric vehicle today, it makes for a nice selling point.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I also think that if we have evidence of that being maybe a smart way to do it, if we look at Tesla. Tesla didn't come to market with a cheap vehicle. It came to market in a mass market way with the Model S, which was an incredible car, fast, sexy, expensive, high margin, competing against the 7 Series and 5 Series from Mercedes and BMW, right? This was coming after where luxury cars sedans were. So there's a clear trajectory that makes sense to be able to do that because you can get higher margin and do it at lower volumes.
Pretty much every startup EV has tried this model to some varying
because Tesla
degree,
showed
right?
that it actually works.
Yeah, Tesla showed it. So Rivian went for the higher margin SUV truck market. Lucid went for the higher margin, let's compete with Mercedes market sort of thing, versus, like you said, not trying to beat the Toyota Corolla.
So I think the biggest news that we got when we got the Q3 results was a couple things. Number one, it's not on this slide specifically, but they talked about how well the samples have been performing of their solid state design. And they've gotten lots of feedback from OEM partners. Not just VW, they have more than a half a dozen OEMs that are testing samples, and they've gotten great feedback. And that's huge. And that's the underlying thing, I think, behind the PowerCo deal. So PowerCo is the subsidiary of VW that's going to manufacture batteries. And some more key things about, they announced the JV the prior quarter, and they built on it a little bit more, talked about reaching some of the goals with some of the things that they're doing. So number one, it's not exclusive, which I think is awesome. But for now, starting with VW, an early investor, the company that's clearly partnered the most directly with QuantumScape, publicly, there's a lot of capacity, 80 gigawatt hours of capacity built into the agreement. So that's pretty substantial. The ability to start earning some revenue. They've already got $134 million and then a royalty prepayment. One of the things we talked about before with QuantumScape is while it's got some cash on the balance sheet to cover its operating costs, for a year plus, bringing in more cash before you actually start generating revenue is only going to help. And we see that continue to play out. So here's the next thing. This is the actual most recent thing that we got from QuantumScape. This was December 5th. So a couple weeks ago. This is really big. And this is Cobra. And you and I, we agree here. Raptor and Cobra, you're not naming cars. This is their manufacturing equipment.
Is this G.I. Joe or something?
Right? But as silly as the names are, there's nothing funny about how critical these process and the product behind the process to manufacturing that ceramic solid state separator are to the company's ability to get to the point that it's at right now. And that's talking about some commercial production in 2025. This is a big deal.
This was actually the part of this press release that surprised me the most. I think the consensus we were talking about earlier this year, maybe the end of last year, was like 2026, 2027 was when we would start to see like the real scale up in terms of actually deploying a commercial product to market. But for the press release to say we are going to have our first commercial product, not prototype, not like, we'll go send out some samples and people will test them. This is a product that's going to be sold to a customer and installed in a vehicle and actually get paid to do it in 2025. I thought that was pretty surprising and encouraging.
Yeah, these were the four major objectives that they announced when they rolled out their plan for 2024. They've hit them all, right? And that is, again, it's incredible that they've done that because it means that they know their business, they know their technology, and they're optimizing on that technology to make it a real commercially viable product. So based on everything we've seen from management, everything we know, one more thing I want to say before we make our predictions for where we think the company is going to be a year from now is we have seen some changes in leadership, generally positive. They brought in somebody with a background and expertise in management of precision manufacturing, who is now the CEO. The prior CEO, who was one of the founders, moved into executive chairman and is now retiring. He is moving out of the business completely and moving on, which you and I agreed that the timing seems strange. But I think broadly, the people that they brought in obviously know how to manufacture. And that's a really critical step that's part of its future progress, I think. So with that said, thinking about where we are now, where do you see the company in a year?
I think a lot of 2025 is going to feel a lot like 2024, at least for the good first couple, maybe 3 quarters, where we'll get some like earnings, maybe some like bumps when they release their quarterly earnings or some optimistic sort of thing. But operationally, it's probably not going to do much because it did say 2025 commercial production, but that can also mean like in December. And I'm going to guess that that's probably more likely the case. A lot of the things that they mentioned in that press release was the idea of like, yes, this is a key factor in building this process. But it didn't say this process is built, we're shipping it to customers. It sounds like it's still a little bit in limbo. And that's where management tentatively set their 2025 goals earlier. They said we're going to have higher volume prototype production and then start to deploy this higher scale manufacturing process they call Cobra. That's kind of where they left it most recently. I think that by so far over the time that we've been following this company, they tend to hit their milestones. And so I don't see any reason not to believe this. It just seems to me like maybe probably the first 9 months is going to be a lot of the same, but I think Q4 2025 things could get pretty interesting here.
Yeah, I agree. I think we see maybe a little bit of revenue recognized in 2025 in the fourth quarter, but I think we're really going to see the true like commercialization that actually shows on the top and the bottom line. That's still going to happen in 2026. I firmly believe that. I think the stock is probably still going to be pretty volatile, but I'm also going to predict that we're going to hear publicly at least a couple more names. The only one we absolutely know for sure is Volkswagen that's publicly disclosed. So we have a lot that are non-disclosed. I think especially if we get more like clear evidence that their process is going to generate a highly competitive from a cost point perspective, better performing battery than the lithium ion standard that's out there now. I think we're going to see some companies want to come public that they're partnered with this company. I'm going to predict we see at least one, maybe two of those happen before the end of the year. As far as the stock, I'm not even comfortable making a prediction on what the stock's going to do. Oh, besides being really, really volatile, I'm going to predict one more thing. I'm going to predict that Tyler Crow owns some QuantumScape stock before the end of 2025.
Oh, that sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy because now you're like putting me on the spot here. Maybe let's see how it goes. I think you may be right about the announcements, and probably it'll be the car companies themselves that want to announce it rather than
Yes.
QuantumScape because, like we mentioned in a previous video, Toyota's coming out with a solid state battery. I do believe that Mercedes-Benz just came out with a fantastic battery that has 600-700 mile range, and people are going to want to let their customers know we have the goods too, and don't want to get caught left behind with a lot of the revolutionary things that are going on in the battery space.